Your Saturn return is about adulting up, learning hard lessons. And I remember realizing I haven't been prioritizing my dreams. I haven't been prioritizing myself. I'm very grateful for the lessons it taught me, which were, hello my friend. I am so excited to dive into this video for you on your Saturn return, what this means for you, and how to not only survive your Saturn return, but also thrive during it. If you don't know me, my name's Taddy. I'm a professional tropical Western astrologer located in Toronto, Canada, and I make videos on astrology, self-growth, self-care, self-love. So if that interests you, please continue watching, please subscribe. And in this video, I want to share some very important things to consider if you're going through your Saturn return, what to really do to best prepare for it, and how some people during their Saturn return can not only thrive during it, while others feel as though it's the most challenging time. So in this video, I'm going to share what a Saturn return is, what this looks like, what you can expect during this time. If you're watching this after your Saturn return, hopefully it gives you some explanation as to what you went through. I will also share my own personal story of moving through my Saturn return, and then I'll end off this video with understanding how to not only survive your Saturn return, but actually thrive during this period of life so that you can set yourself up for the future. So grab some tea, grab some coffee, let's chat. Honestly, I am super excited for this. I also have a free Saturn return guide that I've created, so you can check that out down below if you want more guidance and more info. Now, a Saturn return is when Saturn, the planet, returns to the exact same position it was at the time of your birth. Your first Saturn return will be around the ages of 28 to 31. This is an approximation. Sometimes you could experience it a little bit earlier or a bit later, depending on your Saturn sign and the degree. And what's important to note is there are multiple Saturn returns. This specific video is talking about your first Saturn return, but you're also going to have a Saturn return around the ages of 54 to 60, and then you're going to have another Saturn return around the ages of 84 to 90. If you do not learn the lessons of your first Saturn return, your second and third Saturn return are going to be a lot more difficult. Okay? Please keep that in mind. If you do not learn the lessons of your Saturn return, things are going to get harder and harder for you. So I'm going to share what this means and how to really actually see this as a blessing if you listen to the lessons of Saturn. Now, your first Saturn return is a time when you could be faced with some challenges, restrictions, and just more frustration and delays in your life. You could feel a bit more isolated. You could feel as though it's just more of this tense time period for you. I will say most Saturn returns, there is this heaviness. Saturn is a malefic planet in astrology. I am a modern astrologer, yet traditionally when we look at Saturn, Saturn is a malefic planet, meaning that there's a lot more challenge with this planet. And this is because Saturn represents restrictions, boundaries, hard work, reality, time. It represents what is honestly a bit more tense and a bit more difficult for us to move through. Now, the benefit of Saturn is it also is a place in your chart where you're learning to master. You're met with the most restriction in this area of life, and it can feel like it's so hard for you in terms of taking action or in terms of you're not receiving what you wish you were. However, wherever Saturn is placed in your chart, that is showing you what you're here to do and master. It is where you're going to become the authority figure in that area of life. So it's important to note the sign and the house Saturn is in for you, and also any aspects to Saturn in your chart. I also still offer Saturn return readings for anyone who wants my perspective on their Saturn return. You can just book a regular birth chart reading with me. I'll leave a link to that down below if you want more support and help in understanding your specific Saturn sign. Yet I really want to use this analogy with your Saturn return of building a boat to float on. So if you have not been taking responsibility for your life, you're gonna have this boat that is a bit rickety. There might be some holes in the boat. It might not even float yet. And your Saturn return is you trying to push this boat onto water, and you're realizing, okay, this boat doesn't float. I'm not gonna be able to move across this ocean on this boat. I need to build a more stable foundation for this boat, for my life. Okay, and some people, I will say, have built a better foundation for themselves before their Saturn return, especially if you have any Capricorn and Aquarius placements. It might feel a little bit easier just because you're ruled by Saturn, depending on how many placements and the aspects to those placements. Yet, some people will have a more commercialized boat. Maybe it's made of steel that people can use and move across the water. So some people end up really thriving during their Saturn return if they've put in a lot of hard work beforehand. Yet most of the time, people are met with these very difficult realizations about life. So if you're not in the right relationship, your Saturn return will show you this. Your Saturn return will show you, actually, this person's not that good for you. Actually, will this relationship last throughout time? Saturn, again, represents time. So it's understanding, okay, this might take time to build. So with a Saturn return, a lot of people tend to break up, get into a more committed relationship, or you're starting to date more seriously. This could also look like a career change. Maybe you realize the job that you went into wasn't the job you actually wanted. You're met with some harsh realizations about the work you're doing and realizing, actually, this is not fulfilling for me at all. Your Saturn return can also be a time when you're moving or you start to have children. This is a very common theme. So you're taking on even more responsibility. I also see Saturn returns as a great time period to publish a book or launch a business because you're getting very serious about what would actually take time to grow and develop. Another common theme of a Saturn return is taking better care of your health. Maybe you get really into fitness, or you start to see, okay, I have to take better care of my body right now. Now, a really important theme of a Saturn return is you are learning how to reparent yourself. If you are at this stage, you could feel like there's a bit more tension with family members. If you're going through your Saturn return, maybe you're starting to realize, oh, actually, there's a lot from childhood I need to face right now. Or, oh my goodness, I need to take on even more responsibility. Maybe you get a manager position at the current job you're at, but then you start to realize, actually, this isn't what I wanted. Sometimes it is, because then your hard work is paying off, and I'll talk more about that later on in this video. Yet a lot of the time, Saturn wants you to face whatever it is you've been avoiding. If you have been playing victim, if you are avoiding responsibility, your Saturn return is here to teach you, okay, I need to take full ownership of my success, my life. I need to take care of myself. And basically, a lot that's going to happen in your life is Saturn really sharing, okay, is this person actually a good friend for you? How are you going to act if you're on your own? Are you going to set boundaries with your family members? A lot of my clients tend to go back to therapy during their Saturn return because a lot can come up during this time. I'm sorry to say that there can be a lot more of this tension with certain family members. Maybe they don't like the career you want to go into, which happened for me, which I'll share later on. I see a lot of clients go back to take care of their parents during their Saturn return because Saturn also represents your father. So there are a lot of themes around your father during this time. If your father is no longer a part of your life, Saturn will then take the place of your mother or a different family member. So reparenting yourself during your Saturn return could look like you going back to therapy, you doing more somatic healing practices for yourself, you doing more inner child healing. I have a whole video on inner child healing. I'll link that over here. Yet it could also look like you trying to figure out, okay, who am I? How can I better take care of myself? And how can I build something for myself that lasts? What issues have you been avoiding? Things are going to be very, very clear for you at this time. This is a period of time to take responsibility for your life. So what I've seen with people who don't know they're going through their Saturn return and they're not taking responsibility for their life, this could look like playing victim, ignoring the problem, being avoidant, or just trying to not face what issues they need to face. I do see a lot of divorces happening during a Saturn return because they realize, oh wait, this wasn't the person I thought I married. Or this isn't the relationship I wanted. This isn't the support I thought I would receive. Sometimes people will get married during their Saturn return, and this is a beautiful testament of love. This is more of, okay, I feel more ready to take the next stage in my relationship. This person is committed. This person is dedicated. This person is the person I want to spend my life with. Yet, if it's not that person, if it's someone who isn't actually good for you long term, that's going to become more visible for you. Now, another major theme of your Saturn return is feeling like you're running out of time. This is huge. This is feeling the pressure of societal expectations. This is feeling like, okay, I need to hurry it up. I'm running out of time. I need to get married. I need to get into a more stable career. I need to do all these things. And this can be good and bad because you don't necessarily need to rush your life, yet you're going to feel this pressure of, okay, am I taking my life seriously? Right? And I want us to really think about what societal expectations are actually helpful for you, which ones aren't worth it for you. I do see a lot of people buying houses and wanting to feel grounded and stable, or just moving to a place where they want to build their roots and they want to see, okay, what would actually help me in terms of my foundation? Now, a Saturn return can feel very restrictive. It could feel like you're going through this very dark period of time. Saturn is very somber. Saturn feels very heavy. Okay, this feels so hard. I'm putting in all this work, I'm putting all this energy into this, and I'm not seeing any results. Things are moving so slow. I feel very restricted. I feel very isolated. And it's not really a fun planet. Yet the benefits of Saturn is really trying to think seriously about what would last, what would help you grow, and what responsibilities can you take on to be the person you want to become. Your Saturn return is about adulting up, learning hard lessons, and listening to what those lessons are. Some lessons will be specific to the sign your Saturn is in, or the house Saturn is in for you, but also the aspects to your Saturn. The more general lessons of your Saturn return are really setting those boundaries for yourself. Which friendships are good for you? For example, you might say goodbye to certain friendships because you're realizing, am I friends with this person out of convenience? Or does this person actually support me and my growth? You're learning a lot of lessons around your family during your Saturn return because you're figuring out, how were you raised? What do you need to learn about your relationship patterns and your career patterns that were influenced by how you were raised? What does this look like? So I want to share what happened to me during my Saturn return to give you context, to help you in terms of whatever you're going through so that you know you're not alone and that you can really understand these lessons even more so that you can end up thriving. All right, so my Saturn return happened around 2020 to 2021. My Saturn is in the sign of Aquarius at 2 degrees retrograde. So there were multiple hits of Saturn retrograding back to that exact position. So I had multiple times where it was the most intense. When Saturn is at that exact degree it was at the time of your birth, that's when things can feel a lot more intense. Now for me, I have this controversial opinion that your nodal opposition is harder than your Saturn return. However, that really depends on a lot of people based on if you're going to go through your nodal opposition at the exact same time as your Saturn return, which some people do. Your nodal opposition is when the North and South node return to the exact same signs they were at the time of your birth, yet they're in opposite places. So for example, if you have your North node in Virgo and your South node in Pisces, your nodal opposition is when the North node would be in Pisces and the South node would be in Virgo. And your nodal opposition is a time period where things are pushed out of your life if they are no longer aligned for you. So a relationship, a career, if you do not feel fulfilled by the work you're doing, you're going to be made super aware of this during your nodal opposition. And if someone is not meant to stay in your life during your nodal opposition, this could be a time period where they get pushed out of your life. If you want a whole video on this, please let me know in the comments. Also, please like this video if you're enjoying this so far. And I also have a whole course on the North and South node called Finding Your Fulfillment, Embracing the Nodes of Fate, if you want to dive deeper. Now, going back to my Saturn return, I want to give you context. So I actually went through a really difficult breakup right before my Saturn return during my nodal opposition. And this really shook me to my core. Okay, I really thought I was going to marry this person. We talked about marriage, and I started to realize, okay, something is off with this relationship. Yet I couldn't really put my finger on why that was at this time. And I remember going through that nodal opposition of realizing, okay, I know for myself, I don't want children. This person does want children. I think we should break up now. And this person was like, okay. And I felt horrible. And this was a difficult decision. If you look at my Saturn placement, it's in the 4th house of home in Placidus and my 5th house in whole sign. So learning lessons around children and not wanting children can be common themes. This isn't necessarily for everyone who has Saturn in the 5th house, yet the 5th house represents children. So this is a theme that could potentially come up for you of deciding if you want children or not, or having children around your Saturn return. So what was happening for me is I just went through a really difficult breakup. And I remember thinking, okay, I'm gonna do whatever the F I want right now. I just remember the breakup happening, and that same day, something clicked. And I remember thinking, oh shoot, I have just invested all my time and energy into this relationship that I thought was stable and grounded. And it isn't. It was not. And I remember realizing I haven't been prioritizing my dreams. I haven't been prioritizing myself. And after that breakup, I got this really strong spiritual calling to publish a poetry book. Now, for myself, I was hiding my poetry and writing it in secret for years. And it was something I was so afraid of sharing with the world. I felt very vulnerable with it. I felt as though it was something I always wanted to do, was to publish a poetry book, but I never felt ready. I never felt like it was time. And then I got this very sudden energetic frequency of you need to publish this right now. You need to publish this book. You need to put it out there, and you need to really step it up. Now, this is a part of my Saturn return story. I was trying to gather all my poems from the last few years. I was tracking this, I was trying to organize it, and I found an editor for my poetry book, which is very interesting because she has the same birthday as one of my exes. And I'm like, this makes sense. This is why I need her as my editor. It was just so aligned. And the thing is, Saturn is when you are faced with a lot of themes around what your father went through or who your father is, how you are kind of understanding what they went through and which patterns exist within you that you inherited through your father. So for myself, my father passed away when I was 11, so I had a lot of years of healing that I had to grieve and mourn and go through, which were difficult, which were really, really difficult. So when I was in my Saturn return trying to publish my poetry book, my father was a poet. He had published certain poetry books that were in Serbian. And for me, it was understanding, okay, I am kind of following in his footsteps in my own unique way. So at this time, it was 2019, right before my Saturn return. I had found an editor for my book, and I launched an Indiegogo campaign to raise funds to print this poetry book. Because my background is in graphic design, I wanted the poetry book to look a certain way for the first edition. So I was self-publishing, and I was trying to raise funds to publish about 100 copies of this book because I wanted to use a local printer in Canada. The second edition is with Amazon, yet the first edition, I wanted it to be designed a certain way because my background is in graphic design. So I had a specific vision for the first edition. Now, at this time, I had basically no following. I had maybe 1,000 people following me on Instagram, and I was slowly posting my poems out there. So for me, I hired a coach at this time, and she was helping me through how to really promote my book and what to share based on this. So that was super, super beneficial. I then hired a lot of other coaches and a lot of astrology mentors as well. Yet during this time, I started to really realize, okay, I need to put my work out there. This is gonna be something that I really need to do before I die. So I do raise these funds on my Indiegogo. I think I raised about $2,000 to print this poetry book. It was still not enough to fully cover my expenses, so I did put a lot of my own money into printing this poetry book. So I actually lost money during this printing. I do want to say that. And for myself, I just knew I just wanted to publish this book. This was my dream. This was something I wanted to do so badly. I just felt the pressure of publishing. 2020 then hit, and then my printer went out of business, the one that had a lower rate to publish. And basically, I was at a standstill with publishing this book for months. I would say even over a year. So all these people had invested and paid this money, and I was getting anxious because I'm like, okay, I need to print this book. I need to give this book out because I don't know what to do, right? Because we were in the pandemic, people were losing their jobs, people weren't allowed to see each other. There was just so much going on. Now, what was happening at the same time for me was I had been teaching at a design university. I was a professor teaching design process, and I was really, really miserable. I'm not gonna lie. I had worked so hard to get a design professor position at this time. And this was 3 years of me being a teaching assistant and then going back to do my master's in digital media and then getting a design position afterwards. I then actually go and do the job in 2019 during my nodal opposition, and I'm faced with the reality of, oh my goodness, this is not what I wanted to be doing. Oh my goodness, this is not what I thought it would be. And that was harsh. That was hard for me personally. I was still studying astrology at this time, but I did not launch my practice. So during this time, I'm a professor at this university. I am studying astrology, and I'm trying to publish this poetry book while also having my own design clients on the side. And I'm just trying to figure out, how do I balance all of this out? How do I manage this? What does this look like? And I'm starting to realize, okay, this professor position isn't meant for me. Again, this was during my nodal opposition, so that's when you can really, really feel that realization of, actually, this position is no longer aligned for you. I decided to still be a professor in 2020, and I was actually teaching right when the pandemic hit. So all the professors didn't know what to do. We were all kind of shocked. We just didn't know what would happen to our jobs. We had to switch to an online teaching environment, which honestly was okay for me. Yet I started to realize I can't do this anymore. There were a lot of students that didn't want to be there. There were some really, really great students. I do want to mention that. Yet most of the students just really, really didn't want to be there. And I personally wanted to launch my business, and I wanted to work for myself. So we're in 2020, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now if I'm not teaching? I try to get more design clients as I try to build and figure out, what do I do with my astrology practice? At this time, I was so afraid of launching my astrology practice. I was studying it with a mentor at this time, and I was taking a bunch of astrology courses and reading a bunch of books. And I had a few astrology mentorships that were really, really helping me in terms of building my confidence in my practice, and then also practicing on other people's charts at this time. Now, 2020 just had a sneak preview of my Saturn return. So my book is delayed. I'm frustrated. My printer went out of business and did not tell me. I do want to mention that they kind of ghosted me, and they never told me they went out of business. So I still thought they were going to print my book. So it was months until I realized, I don't have this printer anymore. I just promised 80 people this book. I need to figure out and find a different printer. It was a mess. It was a mess. The astrology poetry book I was trying to print was probably one of the hardest projects I've ever done in my life. And finally, after over a year of trying to print this book, I finally find another printer. I have to pay double the amount. I lose more money, and I finally print the book. I then get all these copies of the book. There was a printing issue. I then have to order more books. I'm going through multiple revisions with my editor at this time, because I start to really read back my poems, go through, filter them, figure out which ones I want to keep, which ones I have to let go of. So I'm going through all of this. Now, what's also happening at this time, I'm feeling super isolated on my own. I live alone. I felt so lonely. It felt like I had no one around me, and I was feeling everyone's energy so strongly of how depressed and anxious everyone was during that time, because it was a scary time. So I'm really feeling super emotional during my Saturn return. I'm figuring out, okay, what do I do to take care of myself? What does this look like? And I really remember this scene in 2020 during Christmas. And I decided to not go back to have Christmas with my mom and brother, because I was setting a boundary at this time. And I just remember walking to the lake during Christmas Day and standing by the water, crying my eyes out. And I'm feeling this mass amount of pain that yes, was my own pain from my sense of loneliness, yet it was also the pain of my ancestors. It was the pain and hurt and grief and mourning of generations of my ancestors. So I could feel that it wasn't just my pain. It's very hard for me to describe this, but it was like some really, really deep karmic healing that I was doing, and I had to be faced with it. I had to confront it. I had to feel my feelings. I started to realize I'm trying to break my generational cycles by setting more boundaries for myself, protecting my energy, protecting myself, but also realizing that I have to learn to love myself. I have to learn how to love living alone. 2019 was also the first time of me learning to live on my own. And 2020 just made it very isolating and very lonely. So my Saturn return was having me face a lot and heal a lot through my breakup, through still mourning the death of my father that also came up, but also my ancestors, and also setting boundaries with my family and letting go of those expectations from my family. I think I learned a lot of compassion for my mother and what she went through, and even though I knew she didn't agree with what I was doing, even though she did not like that I became an astrologer, I had to learn to accept this. I had to learn to accept that not everyone's going to be happy with what I do. I can no longer people please. I can no longer people please, and I have to really just believe in myself, even if no one else believes in me. What also happened in 2020 was I launched my YouTube channel. So you can go look back through those videos, because that's when I first started to post videos on YouTube. And I knew that was something I wanted to build long term. The reason why I came back to YouTube this year was because I wanted to build something that grows, that gives a lot of people free access to information, to help heal the collective energy, to teach people how to learn to take care of themselves better and to love themselves deeply using astrology. Now, 2020 was honestly very, very devastating for me and very difficult, and it made me really face a lot that I was avoiding. I personally wasn't taking full responsibility for my life, so I was trying to really learn how to do this, how to show up for myself, how to show up when no one is watching you, right? How to show up when you do not have an audience, when you have to put in the work and put content out and feel like no one is watching, no one cares. And I had to fight through this feeling and believe in myself enough to keep going. At this time, an astrology mentor was really encouraging me to launch my astrology practice. This is because I also left teaching in 2021. So I did not go back to teach as a design professor. I decided to launch my astrology practice that January. And the beautiful thing is I got 10 clients right off the bat. And this was within 48 hours. I felt so, so grateful for this. It was such an amazing, amazing experience for me. And I started to realize, okay, this is what I'm meant to be doing. I am supposed to help people learn about themselves, feel less alone, and to really understand who they are, what their natural strengths are, and what challenges are they facing so that they can overcome this. If they understand their blind spots, if they understand how to read their birth chart to see there's a bigger purpose and higher calling behind their life. Now it's 2021. I'm still trying to figure out how to print this poetry book. So this poetry book was honestly one of the hardest things I've ever done. It finally got printed in 2021. I had books upon books and books in my tiny apartment, and I would have friends show up on my doorstep to collect their books. That was a beautiful time just to see that love during the panini. And this is my poetry book for those watching. It was a huge, huge feat. I do want to share why the first edition took so long. I had embossed the first edition. So you know it's a first edition if you have this embossment. You can see it has this silver embossment on the cover. I actually have two covers for the first edition. So the first cover was ruined, and then it is called Revisions of the Moon, so there was a lot of revisions. Also, side note, if you're publishing a book, your Saturn return is a great time to publish a book. Just know that it's going to be met with delays. Know that it's going to be really frustrating. It's going to be hard, but it will be worth it. Yet, do not name your book Revisions if you do not want to be met with revisions. Okay, I wish I knew this, but this was a whole feat. Right, I actually have two covers for it because the first cover was messed up. And I'll leave a link to the second edition, which is printed by Amazon, down below if you would like your own copy or if you want to check it out. Now, I was super, super happy I finally had printed this book, right? And that was something I really wanted for my life. That was something that was a dream of mine for years, is to have a published book. And yes, I'm self-published. It was something where I didn't have the audience on Instagram. I did send book proposals at this time, yet I just didn't want to wait for a different publisher to be in charge of my book. I wanted it printed my own way. This is because I wanted my book to be unique. I do have Saturn in Aquarius. Now, what's also happening at this time, I was no longer dating. I needed a break from dating at this time. I was still healing through my breakup. I was still trying to understand my relationship patterns and my family patterns through my birth chart, but also what I needed to heal. And I will say, even though my Saturn return was hard, I felt very lonely, I felt very isolated, I felt very emotional. I think I really needed to go through it. I'm very grateful for the lessons it taught me, which were to stand up for myself, go after my dreams, even if it's hard. It taught me to believe in myself. It taught me that hard work will pay off. It is going to pay off, right? The work you do during your Saturn return will pay off if you are very intentional about it, if you think about the long term, if you're strategic. That's going to help you the most in terms of thriving during your Saturn return. Now, the thing that got me through my Saturn return was my community. I launched my astrology community in 2020, right during eclipse season, which was very intense. Yet for me, I wanted to build a community of my own because I wanted to teach others astrology. I wanted to have that space for new moon and full moon events. I still have the community now. It's called the Moon Sign Creative Community, and it really got me through some very, very difficult times. So since June 2020, I was hosting new moon and full moon events. If you want to join in at all and you want to experience this, I'll leave a link to that down below. We'd love to have you. It's so much fun. But I wanted other people who genuinely love self-growth, who genuinely love astrology and wanted to learn more. I only wanted friends who understood where they were coming from, who understood the spiritual journey. The community is really focused on spiritual and creative entrepreneurs, yet I do see a lot of people in the community just really leaning on each other for support and encouragement for whatever they're going through. And that's what was honestly one of the best things I've done during my Saturn return, was to launch the community, because I really needed them and the right people found me. So if you do not have a community of people who understand what you're going through, who are encouraging, who are supportive, who are uplifting, who want to support you building your business, or who just want to be there for you, then you could check out the Moon Sign Creative Community. Or I would really, really encourage you to find a community that really resonates with you so that you can have that support, because we really, really do need community. I didn't realize how important it was until my Saturn return. Now, where I see the most people thrive during their Saturn return is them really buckling down and building something for themselves. May this be a business, may this be publishing a book, may this be moving to the place they've always wanted to move to, may this be breaking up with that person that no longer is aligned for them, that they know isn't good for them. May this be really being careful and taking care of themselves and really practicing self-care every day, such as working out, meditating, journaling. During my Saturn return, I was journaling every day, I was meditating every day, I was really doing whatever I could to put myself in the best headspace possible. That's how you're gonna thrive, is if you're taking care of yourself and your mindset. Now, there will be a few select people who actually really reap the benefits and the rewards of all the hard work they've put in before their Saturn return. So this is for you if maybe you've just been putting in so much work in your career, and during your Saturn return, you can receive that promotion you've always wanted. Or this could be you if you've been building your business for years. Your Saturn return could be a time period where you're finally seeing, okay, I'm gaining more recognition for my work, or things are finally starting to pay off. Would I consider myself thriving during my Saturn return? Yes and no. I think I accomplished a lot during my Saturn return. I'm actually very, very proud of myself because I was healing generational trauma. I was mourning the loss of my father again. I was living alone during a global panini. I was publishing a poetry book. I was also launching my astrology practice. I was also trying to not date and put myself first. I was also setting boundaries with my family. I was also trying to build and form deeper friendships. I was also launching my community, the Moon Sign Creative Community. So your Saturn return is so, so worth it. But you just need to know that this is the time for you to focus on your dreams. This is the time for you to take care of yourself, show yourself love and compassion, take care of your health, to take care of your mental health, to really put in that work for yourself and show yourself more love and compassion and learn more about yourself. Dive deep into your birth chart so you can really understand your strengths and challenges and life path. Because it actually helped me so much. I actually got so many readings done by different astrologers and other mentors to really help me before I launched my astrology practice. So now I do offer readings to people who want to dive deep into their birth chart. I'll leave a link to that down below if you'd like a session with me. Or if you're thinking of launching your own astrology practice, I now mentor other astrologers. I've helped so many astrologers launch their own astrology practice. I'll leave a link to my mentorship program down below if that's something you want support and help in. So I really hope this video gave you a good overview of your Saturn return. It gave you some context as to why things can feel more challenging or a bit harder. And if you want your free Saturn return guide, I've created a free guide for you. I'll leave a link to that down below. And if you enjoyed this video, you can check out this video right here that leads you through societal expectations at the time you are 30, what to understand about this time period, how to let go of these societal expectations and stop caring what other people think. This is life-changing. I'll leave a link to that down below. I'll share my experience and hopefully you feel less alone through it. Thank you so much for watching, friend. Comment down below if this resonated with you, if you've experienced your Saturn return, what this looked like for you, if you're currently going through it. Please let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear it. I'm sending you so much love. Just remember, the universe has your back. With peace and love, take care.